Welcome to the 1662 Fellowship of North America, where we promote the historic Anglican Formularies as the theological center of gravity for North American Anglicanism. I am Isaac Rayberg, the Archdeacon for Liturgy in the Anglican Diocese of All Nations and the Rector of All Saints Anglican Church in San Antonio, Texas. Today, we're going to be having a first for us on the podcast, where we'll be having an interview. I'm joined today with the Reverend Stephen Wedgeworth, who is the rector of Christ Church Anglican in South Bend, Indiana. Stephen, thank you so much for joining us today.
Having me, Isaac. I'm really excited about the show.
Yeah, so you're part of the Diocese of the Living Word, a sister of us. We were Cana West back when there was a Cana. Y'all were Cana East. We've had your bishop at our church before, and we are glad to be back in the ACNA, where we have that more formal connection again. And so it was a real joy for me to watch as Bishop Julian was bringing you in. I was familiar with your work from the Calvinist International beforehand, and you've really been a champion on the internet in particular of the formularies. You're always blogging about that on Facebook or other resources, part of a couple of podcasts, and you're one of the few parishes that we know of that is using the 1662 here in North America. So absolutely ideal to talk about some of these issues. So you how was the formularies part of your journey into Anglicanism?
Yeah, so I had been a Presbyterian and Reformed minister going back. I was first ordained in 2010. So, quite a while as an active minister in that world. But I was never the perfect textbook Presbyterian.
Mm-hmm.
I always sort of colored outside of those lines, take a little from the continental tradition, a little bit from the Germans, a little bit from the Lutherans, and also from the Anglicans. And honestly, some of my favorite sort of English Reformation era theologians and personalities were Anglican bishops. I was a big fan of Bishop John Davenant, going back even to my days in seminary. Really appreciated James Ussher. So I always had a foot in that world. But to be honest, and no offense, but whenever you say that, offense is coming. So
of course,
sorry.
of course.
I just had never seen Anglican churches, in the wild, that seem to actually follow the 39 Articles,
right,
or use any kind of prayer book that I would have connected with the historic English Reformation. I'm interacting with folks, in the 1990s, 2000s era. And so, I thought, well, I guess that Reformation Anglican thing, it was cool while it lasted, but it's long gone. And then when I started meeting people, they said, actually, no, that's not true. There are thousands of us, maybe not thousands, but dozens of us. And other people said, no, actually, we are still around. There are churches that are still trying to follow this. And they even helped me understand some of the American history and timeline a little bit better. It's not quite as simple as I just portrayed it to be. So, whoa, okay, this could be a real living church tradition still. I wanted to look into that. And I knew the 39 Articles. That was something that you just study in Reformation history. But getting into the 1662 Book of Common Prayer, that was extremely eye-opening, helped connect a lot of dots, honestly helped me to understand a lot more about the Westminster documents.
Because Westminster comes from that world, right?
Oh, yeah. Anthony Milton, who's a great historian of English church history, he argues that really, when we talk about Anglicanism, you've got to take Henry VIII and his the King's Matter, and you got to take Edward, and then you got to take Elizabeth, but you really have to keep going, and you go through the Commonwealth period of turmoil up into the Restoration, and all of that really has to be understood as Anglicanism, right. Even though it doesn't all stick, it doesn't all last. And the Westminster documents were an act of Parliament. And all of the churchmen at the time were operating in the assumption that that would be the established Church of England. And many of those men had previously been, acting Anglican clergy. And so when you read some of their documents as an Anglican now, you go, I see where that comes from, and it can be quite surprising to Presbyterians. There's a consecration of the baptismal waters in the Westminster Directory. There's a prayer that the Holy Spirit would unite the things signified with the sign at this time.
I'd imagine for American Presbyterians, those things are quite shocking.
Yeah, and then there's a prayer of thanksgiving after it's over, thanking him for doing what you asked for. So, as a
very prayer book.
Exactly. As a Presbyterian, that's kind of weird. You say, I'm not sure what was going on there, and we don't have to use that anyway. It's just a directory. You kind of can dismiss it. But now that I'm familiar with the Book of Common Prayer, I say, that's the same people. I mean, it's a little different. They've made some transformations, some changes, but you can see the connection. And then reading the Book of Homilies has also been really incredible because they're sermons, but those are also they're little miniature theology classes.
Right. They're not exegetical, or not exegetical. They're not. Oh my goodness, I'm forgetting the term, where you preach through the text. They're not expositional, they're topical, right. and so that they can be so theological.
Yeah, and it's surprising just how much depth is in there. And so oftentimes, if you want to find out more of what the Anglican doctrine of X is, you look at the articles, you look at the prayer book, but then see if there's something about it in the homilies. And they are almost little classes on the matter. And so when I discovered this portion of the Anglican heritage, it just made me feel kind of immediately at home. I knew right away what I was dealing with. I said, I understand this world. And so all of what I had been studying, all of what I've been working on in Continental Reformation history, in conforming Puritan history, some of the German Reformed and the Melanchthonian Lutherans, this is just one more consistent voice in that conversation.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, filling in those blanks and kind of giving you, okay, this is why I haven't fit in quite as well, and now I can. And you're absolutely right that a really formulary based Anglicanism is not common these days, and it probably ought to be. I say that as the rector of a church that doesn't always look the way that would have looked. Often in many ways. So it's a journey, it's a process. So that's really neat. We're going to go ahead and cut into the interview at this point, and we're going to end up splitting this interview into 3 episodes. So this is a good stopping point. Again, thank you for joining us in the 1662 Fellowship of North America. If this has been helpful, please do like and subscribe. Please follow Stephen and Christ Church on the social medias as well. And next time, we will pick up with the second part of our interview with the Reverend Stephen Wedgeworth. And actually, we'll be splitting this interview into 3 parts. So this is the end of part 1. We have 2 more parts coming. Looking forward to you joining myself and Stephen again as we finish the interview. Thank you so much, and God bless.